Welcome to this session on tapping or emotional freedom techniques. My name is Marv Curtis and I'll be your host. EFT, or tapping as it's often called, is a technique that is used to disconnect your emotions from your logical processes. What happens when a person experiences trauma, a traumatic experience of emotion, an accident, a crisis, some hurt feeling, is that experience, that trauma, is remembered both in your logical brain and in your emotional brain. For the purposes of this discussion, we'll say that those reside in your head for the logical and in your heart for the emotional. As a matter of fact, they are experienced and stored all through your body, but we're going to use that as the metaphor. The problem that comes up is when you recall a memory of something that was unpleasant, or something that you have associated with that previous traumatic experience, automatically is generated the emotional memory that you had at that same time, which is why in PTSD, something will trigger a memory, and without any provocation at all, this powerful emotion that they had experienced and stored way back when is fired up, and that creates all kinds of problems. Well, this happens for all different degrees of trauma and emotion. So the trick is, how do we give you flexibility to be able to remember those experiences without all of the emotion, to enable yourself to control those emotions in a way that allows you to be functional and useful in life? So there's a process that we use called EFT, or tapping, that is really effective in this. It's one of those techniques that you can actually do for yourself and to yourself very effectively to give yourself a relief. It's also very effective to help someone else to do. So the basic idea behind this is, once again, using energy meridians. So we're going to tap on energy meridian endpoints in the same way that you might use an acupuncture needle, only we're just simply going to tap. And when we do, while we retain the memory of the emotion in our mind, it breaks that connection. So we talked before about neural pathways and how your brain encodes messages of pain. Well, in emotional pain, it also is full of submodalities. And by doing this tapping, we're able to break that connection so that it is not an automatic response. Here's how we start. We start first with an affirmation. We're going to tap right here. We call it the karate chop point. So the fleshy part of your hand, if you're going to break a brick or a board, you're going to tap there. You might use one or two. I frequently will use 3 different fingers to tap there. And I'm going to start by saying, I accept myself fully and completely, even though, and then I'm going to state and verbalize whatever the trauma is. A great place to start is, what are the really mean and nasty things you say to yourself when no one else is listening? How do you deprecate yourself? How do you try and self-soothe by diminishing someone else or some other situation? Those are great places to start because they have so much emotion. But let's just say that I'm a small child and someone has taken my ball from me. And you can elevate this to many other situations. I accept myself fully and completely, even though Bobby took my ball. I accept myself fully and completely, even though Bobby took my ball. I accept myself fully and completely, even though Bobby took my ball. We're going to go through it 3 times. If you're doing it for someone else, sometimes it's useful to stop and say, does this resonate with you? Are you feeling the emotion? Because this doesn't work if they just say the words. It only works if you are doing it while you are in the emotional state. So you're trying to create a visual image and a heart message as well. After we've done that, assuming that it resonates, we're going to start tapping on the head. This is where, as a baby, all of those different plates fuse together. That's the target. Bobby took my ball. I'm going to tap 6 or 7 or 8 times. Then, right here, the ends of your eyebrows are some of those very important points. So you can tap on one or the other, it doesn't matter which side. I frequently use 3 fingers and have 1 each on either eyebrow. Bobby took my ball, and I might repeat it more than once. Bobby took my ball. And if there are other aspects to this trauma that I experienced, let's say Bobby yelled at me, I might add that in as we go along. So the next point is right here. So the orbit of your eye, which is the bone that surrounds your eye, has kind of a bend to it, a curve. You want to have at least one finger right on the bend, and you can add 2 on the side, which is what I typically do. Bobby yelled at me when he took my ball. Bobby yelled at me when he took my ball. Then the next point is right on that same orbit, right directly beneath your pupil. Bobby took my ball. Bobby took my ball. Then the next point is right here, the middle of your upper lip, just below your nose. I call it the nose point. Bobby yelled at me, told me he didn't like me. I'm looking for anything that triggers a high emotion. Bobby said he didn't like me. And probably that was more important than whether he took my ball. Then the next one is same point on your lower, so it's just above your chin in the dimple area. Bobby said he didn't like me. Now the next point, if you think your collarbone has points, you go down from the point and in a little bit, and if you push on it, you'll notice that it's a little bit sensitive. It's kind of tender. So normally what I'll do for the collarbone point is I'll just make a fist and have you tap right here. Bobby doesn't like me. Then if you think of the middle of your armpit, you go down 4 inches, you're tapping there. Bobby doesn't want to be my friend. Bobby doesn't want to be my friend. And then usually what I'll do is I'll put hand on wrist, wrap my fingers around so that it's like I'm testing my pulse, and I'll have the person breathe deeply 2 or 3 different times. This is kind of the balancing phase. Now the way we calibrate this is 2 different ways. Sometimes you will have started this process by saying on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 being the most intense, how strong is this feeling of Johnny taking your ball? And they'll give you a number. And after we've done 1 round or 2 rounds or 3 rounds, and each time as we go through it, we ask, did anything else come up? Are there any other aspects to this, so that we tap? But at the end of that, we say, now, where is that on a scale of 1 to 10? And we're looking for it to go down. Sometimes it will go all the way down to 0. Sometimes it will only go down 1 point or 2 points, and we just keep going until we get to that point. Another way to do this, and it's the way that I frequently do it, is I wait until we're at this point, and then I'll say, let's imagine that you started at an emotional level of 10. Based on that, where would you be now? And that gives me the ability to not make them create a subjective evaluation of their pain, because sometimes either they want to over-accentuate it or they want to under-accentuate this. This way I get kind of a more objective evaluation. If you were 10 when we started, where are you now? That lets me know whether I'm making progress or not. And if we're not making good progress, then I'm guessing that I haven't hit the really deep emotional core of this problem, and I'll just ask 1 or 2 more questions until I can see and feel, yeah, they're responding, this is an emotional experience for them. Then we'll start over again. I accept myself fully and completely, even though, and you can reverse that, even though I feel angry at Johnny for having taken my ball, or Bobby for taking my ball, I fully accept and appreciate myself. And you can change the verbiage there to whatever suits you. With small children, you can just simply say, I'm okay, even though. So that's a great way to enable yourself to break that bond between your emotional memory and your logical, conscious memory in a way that still retains flexibility, retains any learning that was appropriate and necessary from the experience, but without taking you to a place where you don't have that same kind of flexibility that you desire. One of the great things about this technique is that you really can't do it wrong. No matter what you're going to do is be better than what you were doing before. There is an exception to this rule. If you've had a dramatically difficult trauma, let's say something that might result in a PTSD type diagnosis, you probably don't want to do this to yourself. You want to do it in the presence of a qualified professional. But for the everyday kinds of traumas that we experience in relationships with people especially, this is a terrific tool to use. As I said, you can't do it wrong. You can help people out with it. It's very soothing. It's something that you can do over and over again, and it just gets better and easier every time you do it. It's a great technique to use on yourself, on your children, with your partners, and with coworkers whenever they're in a situation where they're experiencing distress or discomfort. Best of luck. Go get 'em.